The observation deck of the Celestial Harmony had always been Giselle's favorite place aboard the diplomatic vessel. The young Rylothian loved watching stars streak past during FTL jumps, her copper-furred tail swishing with excitement as she pressed her small paws against the reinforced viewing glass. At only 7 cycles old, she was the youngest passenger on the transport, a distinction her parents reminded her of whenever she wandered too far from their quarters. Today, however, she wasn't supposed to be here at all. Giselle had slipped away during the Wu sleep cycle, drawn by the promise of watching the ship drop out of hyperspace near the Confederation Embassy station. Her parents would scold her later, but the view would be worth it. She padded silently across the empty deck, her species' natural stealth serving her well, until she spotted the human. He sat alone in the corner, a tall figure hunched over a data tablet, his dark hair falling across his forehead. Humans were still rare in this sector of space, and Giselle had never seen one up close. Her ears perked forward with curiosity. The human glanced up, noticed her, and offered a slight nod before returning to his work. Xander had been reviewing security protocols for the past 3 hours. As the sole human security consultant assigned to this mission, he carried the weight of protecting 67 delegates from 14 different species. The coffee had gone cold an hour ago, but he kept sipping it anyway, his eyes scanning threat assessments and contingency plans. The little Rylothian who'd just entered was a curiosity, but not a concern. Her file said she was the daughter of Ambassador Threll, a minor diplomat attending the trade negotiations. Xander had memorized every passenger manifest before boarding. That's when the proximity alarms began to scream. The Celestial Harmony shuddered violently, throwing Giselle to the floor. Emergency lights flooded the observation deck in crimson waves as the ship's automated voice announced, "Hull breach detected. Hostile boarding craft attached to portside airlock 7. Pirates in Confederation space. Impossible, yet happening." Xander was on his feet instantly, his tablet clattering to the floor. His hand moved to the plasma pistol at his hip, even as his mind raced through protocols. Portside airlock 7 was 3 decks below, which gave them maybe 90 seconds before armed hostiles reached this level. "Kid, get over here," he said, his voice calm despite the chaos. Giselle scrambled toward him, her eyes wide with terror. Her species' danger instinct screamed at her to hide, to find somewhere small and dark to wait out the threat. But the human was moving with purpose, dragging a heavy equipment locker across the deck to create a barricade near the entrance. "Slide under my chair," Xander instructed, pulling out his weapon and checking the charge. "Stay low, stay quiet, and don't move unless I tell you to." The young Rylothian didn't need to be told twice. She dove beneath the reinforced seat he'd been occupying, her small body tucking into a tight ball, her tail wrapped around her legs. From her hiding spot, she could see the human's boots as he took position behind the locker, his weapon trained on the entrance. The ship shuddered again. Somewhere below she heard shouting in languages she didn't recognize, followed by the distinctive crack of energy weapons firing. The sound made every instinct in her body scream to run, but there was nowhere to go. She pressed herself flatter against the floor, whimpering softly. "Good instincts, kid," Xander said without looking down, his voice steady. "You're doing great. Just keep doing exactly what you're doing." Those words, spoken with such certainty, cut through Giselle's panic. The human wasn't afraid. Or if he was, he wasn't showing it. She forced herself to breathe slower, watching his boots shift slightly as he adjusted his position. The door to the observation deck exploded inward. 3 figures burst through, Kravaxian pirates by the look of their armor, each carrying military-grade pulse rifles. They swept the room with predatory efficiency, their multiple eyes scanning for targets and valuables. Xander fired twice. The first shot caught the lead pirate in the chest plate, the superheated plasma melting through armor and flesh. The second clipped the shoulder of the pirate on the left, sending him spinning backward. The third pirate dove for cover behind a display console, returning fire wildly. Giselle's ears flattened against her skull as energy bolts screamed overhead. The smell of scorched metal and burned flesh filled her nostrils. She wanted to close her eyes to shut out the violence, but she couldn't look away from the human's boots. They remained planted, steady, as he methodically returned fire. "Ship security, this is Consultant Hayes on Observation Deck 3. Xander spoke into his comm unit, his voice somehow still calm. "Multiple hostiles engaged. civilian present, requesting immediate backup. The response came through crackling with static. "Opie that, teams deployed, hold position." The third pirate popped up from cover, his rifle tracking toward Xander's position. But the human had anticipated the move, already adjusted his aim. Another plasma bolt, another body hitting the deck. The observation deck fell silent except for the ship's alarm systems and the crackle of small fires from melted equipment. Xander kept his weapon raised, scanning for additional threats. After a long moment, he spoke again, this time to the small shape under his chair. "Stay put for now, Giselle. We're going to wait for the cavalry." She was surprised he knew her name. Her heart was still hammering against her ribs, but the worst of the panic had faded. The human had protected her. More than that, he'd made her feel safe even while death had been flying through the air around them. "Are they dead?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Yes." "Have you killed before?" Xander was quiet for a moment, his boots shifting slightly. "Yes. Does it get easier?" "No," he said, and there was something in his voice, a weariness that made him sound much older than he looked. "And if it ever does, that's when you should worry." Security teams arrived 3 minutes later, flooding the observation deck with weapons drawn. They found Xander still in position, his plasma pistol trained on the entrance, and a young Rylothian emerging carefully from beneath a chair. In the aftermath, while medics checked Giselle for injuries and her parents rushed to embrace her, she overheard the security team leader talking to Xander. 3 hostiles neutralized, 1 civilian protected. 0 friendly casualties, the officer said, reviewing his tablet. "Efficient work, Hayes. Very human of you." Xander just nodded, holstering his weapon. Just doing the job. But Giselle understood something the security officer didn't. She'd seen dozens of species in her young life, some predators, some prey, some adapted for combat, others for diplomacy. But humans were different. They could be gentle enough to offer comfort to a frightened child, while simultaneously ruthless enough to end threats without hesitation. As her parents led her away, Giselle looked back one last time. Xander caught her gaze and offered that same slight nod he'd given when she first entered the observation deck, a simple gesture that somehow contained both acknowledgement and reassurance. In the years that followed, Giselle would go on to become a security specialist herself, much to her diplomatic parents' surprise. When colleagues asked why a Rylothian, a species known for avoiding conflict, would choose such a profession, she always gave the same answer. "Because I once saw a human protect someone simply because it was the right thing to do. If they can find that courage despite all their fears, then so can I." And sometimes, when training cadets of her own, she would tell them about the day she hid under a chair during Gunfire, and the human who taught her that good instincts and courage weren't opposites. They were partners.